All right, this is going to be about a 30-minute presentation. If I can, I made my living talking most of my life as a professor, so I talk too fast sometimes, so I'll try to be better. First thing I want to say, early 19th century, we're talking about early in the late 19th century. I'm going to talk about rural free delivery for a couple moments here, and that will come to bear. My name, by the way, is Gary Tiffin. Well, I guess it's going to be up there now, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's go to the next slide. One of the best histories of Turner was written at the request of the city of Turner to do the history of Turner. And when you read that, you will see that in the early 1900s, well, actually we're going to see 1851, which is claimed to be the first, 1871, I guess it is, the first rural delivery process in the city of Turner. But anyway, you can read that for yourself. It's so blurred I can hardly read it myself. But it does talk about some of the early people who worked on the roads as well as the mail. 1870, when the town, 70 people lived in the town, and we know from that moment on there was rural delivery. Although it was personal, it wasn't organized, it wasn't funded by anyone.
Did you say 70 people?
Yes, 70. We're talking in the late 19th century, in the mid-19th century, yes. Only 400 in 1900, by the way, so now it's over 3,000. We'll catch up with Aumsville someday. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is the postage stamp put out for the 100th anniversary of rural free delivery. And I'm going to read what's up there. The pressure for new means of rural delivery began and developed in the late 19th century. Turner began the service October 16th, 1897. This was not funded at this point. We're going to get to that in a minute. But they began the service, although they were doing it earlier than that. Early that year, Turner was the first assigned, followed by Aumsville on September 1st, 1902, after the government began to fund rural delivery. Yes?
So, before it was funded, was it a collection of volunteers? Or was
Yeah,
it just
volunteers who made money in various ways, yeah. It was a job, and there are some people that say if you make 100 deliveries a day, you might make a living doing it. This interesting stamp here, though, is published by the U.S. Post Office, and I think it's a really nice depiction of what that might have looked like then. All right, let's go to the next one. Now, this hangs today in the Turner Post Office. First rural route, 1871. And I can't find evidence of that. That is the first rural route. I believe it because it's been around and verified in some other ways. But that is now posted in the current Turner Post Office. Let's go on. Now, we're going to see a few slides of post offices in Turner. This is from an April 1913 pamphlet. Turner, the center of the Willamette Valley. I'm sorry, Aumsville, I don't know if that's true or not. Note the identification of the post office. You will see the mill race in front that used to exist in Turner. Anybody remember the mill race in Turner? You. That was taken out by Brooklyn Lumber in about 1950, if I'm not mistaken. So let's move around and see some other post offices in Turner. That was a bank, which is also right next to and part of the post office system, 1950. 35, I'm sorry, and they closed in 60. Continue, you're going to see all the Aumsville post offices, don't worry. When I got to town in 2001, this was the post office, and it is now Furniture Medic. It was used for some other things for a while, but it still exists, and in fact, it was one of the first, it's right across the street if you've ever eaten at Turnaround Cafe. And it was one of the first businesses that came into town that began to spur interest in purchasing and buying in the city of Turner. Continue. And that's Furniture Medic, and that's the building that exists today. And it does quite a business in terms of restoring, fixing furniture, if you ever need help on that, they do it. Okay? That's the current post office, and some of you have driven by it if you haven't been there. And the next slide will give you information about when it was built. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. That's the interior. I know you really wanted to see this, but the inside of the Turner Post Office. You have your own inside post office. I've been there many times. Anyway, let's go on. All right, now I'm going to take you through I have about 8 copies of early letters. This is the earliest one. Notice from Turner, and it's Thomas Shaw is the one who received it. That's what that bottom Thomas Shaw, you can see it there, Front Street in Salem. What's interesting is that this was 1893. So this one had to have been delivered by rural free delivery. There was no system at that point.
And notice that the address is to the left on the bottom.
Well, they don't have to put numbers. They just put Salem, or they just put city. I've seen lots of early ones that says city. Okay, let's go to the next one. By the way, this is a very valuable cover. We don't need to worry, but this is about a $200 cover because of the date and because of some other things on it. So let's go to the next one. Now this is called postal stationery, and we still have that today. You can go buy envelopes where the stamp is embossed into the envelope, okay? And this is, I don't know who Hillary is, but we're going to see that later. But notice, and can anybody interpret that, what that town is? I've tried to figure that out, and I can't do it. Okay, thank you.
I didn't know what
I was born in Oregon, but spent 40 years in Southern California, so I'm still catching up on my geography.
Up towards California.
Yeah, okay, yeah, California, Southern California, and Central California. Interesting, it was sent on the 20th of January and got in Salem on the 30th. So that tells you something. Now, there's going to be some quicker deliveries, but that would be, it might be held up for a while before somebody trotted in to Salem and went on. That, again, is part of postal stationery. Sometimes cancellations get blurred, they're very hard to read, and that can be difficult. Let's go on to the next one.
Question?
Sure.
It says after 10 days return to, does that mean like if they don't find the person in 10 days, you're supposed to return to them?
But it took 10 days to get there. You know, those that, I am not an expert in postal history. I know a lot of people who are. We have a couple in the room. But some people, the whole collecting postal history is a major part of the state hobby. There are people that just have box after box after box of it, and dead post offices are really popular. Post offices that no longer exist. And by the way, I will say this, that, no, I'll come to that later. All right.
Don't forget it, Gary.
No problem, Sally, I knew you. One of our city councilors in Turner. All right, the next one isn't very helpful because what often people do is they'll take an old letter and take the stamp off. It was probably a cheap stamp to begin with. So there's not much to say there except what you see, but rural free delivery, FDO, Turner, 1902 in Oregon. Now, that's about the time that Turner, along with Aumsville, began to receive funding to actually have routes that were taken by people who would deliver the mail. Okay? That's all I can do on that one. The next one is very interesting. The name here is Labia Witzel. Now, the name Witzel probably is known to some of you. There's Witzel Avenue. I don't know much about that family, but that was to Miss Labia Witzel. And that was, the date on that is really hard to do. Well, no, it's not the backside tells you, October 10th, 1905. That's what we got it up there. Which in some ways is maybe the most interesting. The 1909 Panama Exposition was held to celebrate excuse me, not the Panama, oh, come on, Jerry, the Alaska celebration, Alaska Yukon celebration. And you'll see Seward on there, but on that letter you will see Miss A.E. McKinney. And so there is a McKinney, and there is a book written on the McKinney family. You could probably trace that down if you wanted to, into which part of that McKinney family was.
And their base is out on 70, on Brick Road.
Yeah. Right. So that's 1909, so we're getting a little closer now to systematic delivery, even though it may take more time some days than others. So the next one does demonstrate that. If we go to the next letter. Again, this is from, I thought it was McKellen, but I think it is McClellan. And, pardon? Is that a name known to some of you?
McClellan, he was the postmaster in West Dayton.
Okay, thank you. So that's January of 1912 to Mrs. Melinda Wade in Salem. Now, what's interesting about this letter, it was sent January the 10th and got there the 19th, but it did get there sooner than 10 days. So there again, and by the way, by this time, nationally, there were all kinds of rural routes. West Virginia was the first one in 1896 to actually organize one on their own. And then Oregon and Turner did it the next year. By 1902, there was funding. By 1915 or 20, I think I've got some data here you might be interested. In 1890, 65% of all Americans were rural people, and that doesn't surprise you. What's even more interesting, I think, is by 1915, there were 18,813 post offices, and there were 43,877 rural delivery systems. So, and a lot of post offices had to close because there was no reason to come to town because the mail could be delivered. And the merchants did not like that because if they don't come to town, they're not going to buy stuff. So there was a lot of resistance early on to creating rural free delivery based on the economics of it. Yeah. So that's the first time we were selfish in this country, but that's okay. This is a postal card. You've used these before. They're just a postcard with imprinted. And there you see the date on it, and Turner. And to Mary Howard, Secretary of the State, and in Clackamas. That's interesting because as I'm looking here, it was mailed December 21st, got there in 2 days, and 1 day, December 22nd. So somebody had a speedy system.
Especially for the Christmas season.
Pardon?
Especially for the Christmas season.
Well, they were probably delivering packages and Christmas cards and all that. Yeah. My last one here doesn't tell us anything except it was sent to, there's a date on it, but it's blank on the backside, but I threw it in just because it's one of the early ones. Now, I remind you at the beginning, I said early Aumsville and Turner postal history, not early 19th century, but early in the late 19th century is what we're talking about, up to the 1920s. And that's really my presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Ted. Ted's been wonderful to work with on all this, and he's going to show you some stuff that's pretty amazing, I think. So Ted, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, so this is one of the best ones that I have in my personal collection. It's a manuscript postmark. Carlene over there might recognize the postmaster's name.
What do you mean by manuscript?
They didn't have a postmark, a rubber stamp. The postmaster scribbled through the stamp, wrote Aumsville, Oregon,
From Monday, gotcha.
1869. And postmaster was John W. Cusack. He was our first postmaster in Aumsville. Credit? Cusick. And so you can see, it's interesting the way they abbreviated Oregon with the N. So that's what, there's a lot of them that happen like that. in early post offices before maybe the post office sent them a rubber stamp or something.
Well, it still happens, people, you get mail, they just cross it out with a Crayola or something, the stamps are in.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Ted,
That's
is that, you know, is that place no on,
Peoria, Lynn County, no, it's down there. I've been
oh,
through
it's
it.
still there?
Yeah, on the way to Corvallis, Highway 34, you take left, you run into Peoria. Little town, it's got a riverfront park and a gazebo and a few other little things. Yeah. It's, that's one of the post offices that went out with rural free delivery. There's a lot I can tell you about some of that. Okay, number 2. So this one, Henry Porter, addressed to Henry Porter, and actually from J.H. Porter, that I later determined that the initials were J.H. Roger Porter has seen this. The Porters, of course, have real estate here in town. And I have to transcribe the letter. It's in the notebook over there. This other seal that you see, I finally figured this out, Glenn. It's Aumsville Lodge 127 IOGT, International Order of Good Temperance. Promoted the ideas of temperance, peace, and brotherhood. And so I have the original letter, and then we have a transcribed letter that you can look at later.
Ted, on the postmaster dates, it says March 29, 1870, and then November 6, 1871. What are the dates?
Those are the dates of the postmaster that was here in Aumsville.
Oh,
You see his postmaster and his dates of service.
oh, okay.
And there's a list of all Turner postmasters and Aumsville postmasters. Our postmasters has a long list. Turner, they had one postmaster that was there for a very long time, but we had several that were just a year and 2 years. So our list is quite a lot longer. So you've seen that one, right, Roger? I showed that to you, I think. But it's hard to read. And then the back of the letter, the way he folded it, every square has a rubber stamp on it from the lodge. And that's, as it says there, it's 1871. It's a little hard to make out, but with the letter, I was able to identify dates and so forth. Okay, number 3. This is just a copy of the letter. Gary mentioned the Postal History Group, which I'm a part of. It's actually called Pacific Northwest Postal History Society. It takes in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. So one of my members' friends sent me this, just because it was on a postmark, going to Oakland and Alameda, California. But the person that wrote it was actually from Turner. And somehow it got mailed in Aumsville. And there's kind of a 4x6 copy of the letter and a transcribed letter for that one too. He's notifying somebody of a passing in the family or something. That's why I call it a morning letter.
Would you point that out again, why?
Why what?
Why was it called a morning?
Well, I don't have it in front of me. It's over there. It's because he's, well, no, I think that's just part of the frame. The yellow is the letter. It's just because he's notification of a death in the family, so they called it a morning letter.
You couldn't tell that before you opened it.
No, you wouldn't know.
But those were very widely used in Great Britain in the 19th century and other places, so they're not rare. You find that black.
Yeah, and I don't know, I have to look at the original or the copy. I didn't realize, I think the blank was part of it, but, yeah. Okay, so number 4, I think, next, here you go, all right. This one is, of course, addressed to Woodburn, Oregon, 1879. If you recognize the name out of Woodburn, the Settlemeyers, the Settlemeyer House, they were very big in fruit orchards in the early parts of Oregon being developed. A lot of covers and letters out there to and from the Settlemeyers, people buying fruit trees in Oregon, or enough trees to start orchards and stuff like that. This particular letter is, I have the original letter and the transcribed. He's just talking to Mr. Settlemeyer about bringing some sheep over and pasturing them for $12 per acre. But anyhow, they did have fruit trees. And this again goes to the postmaster was August Staley. very beautiful house up there, Settlemyre House in Woodburn. Okay. Number 6.
I think you need to take this all on.
Well, it's kind of back in, I found it. Yeah, it's there. I think it's kind of like the Brown House now. They have tours and stuff, I believe. It's been a long time since I've been by it. Don't quote me on it, but you can find it. There's signs that say Settlemyre House. You did this? Yeah, that's what I thought. Another question? 6? Okay, so this was a letter that I picked up at a paper postcard show. That's what I'm guilty of. You go to these shows, paper and postcard shows, and people just have boxes of these kind of covers from Oregon, Washington. Sometimes they're broken out by counties, so it's really nice to just go to Marion County and find what I want, because that would be my main interest county. So this is from Martha S. Reed. They came to New York in 1852 or so. We have letters that she wrote, one to her sister Lorinda before they left New York, and then one, whatever, year and a half, year later. In fact, it's over there. It's not transcribed, but she wrote one before they left to her sister, and then one when she got to Oregon. This one, of course, is 1880, and it's a 4-page letter, and it's been transcribed so you can read it too. Always, whenever I go to these shows and pick up, see Aumsville postmarks, I can always wanted to buy them. Yeah, the 2 previous letters are 1852.
Dare I ask what kind of money you have to pay to get something like this?
I'm guilty of not knowing. I don't remember. Actually, I would not have spent $200 or $300 on once. I know that because I have a wife here. They like to buy it. It wasn't very expensive.
Sometimes dealers don't know what they've got, and they put them in a dollar box, and you can get a $25 for a buck.
I mean, I spent $20, $40, but never over 50 for something.
Never admit it with your wife.
Yeah. Carla? No, I found it very good.
The average Joe out there.
Well, what they do with these postal covers, and even though this is an operating post office, because of the age of this postmark, they have different ratings for rarity. And they can range from $1 to an operating post office to number 9, which could be $500 or $600 for one cover.
See the 1980s.
It's 1880. It's not up there, but it's here because I have the letter. So that's why you can, and this was wrote by somebody else before I acquired it, of course.
Who does the rating, I'm sorry?
Well, there was a gentleman that, can't think of his name right now, but they put out a couple books that has lists of every Oregon post office and their rarity number, the dates of operation, and Gary called them
Dead post office.
dead post office, but another term is discontinued post offices, DPO, same abbreviation. So I was going to talk about that a little bit. So, there were communities up here in Wallow Hills. There was Whitaker, there was King, there was Clymer. They all had post offices up in the Wallow Hills. And I know where most of those locations were at because I've researched them. So Calamity had several up on that east side of town. Clune was another one, KLUNE. And West Dayton was an active post office and a store when it got downsized to a rural station of Aumsville, and then later that was discontinued, so it becomes a discontinued post office. Oh, the other one is Lewisburg. It was sat up there in a store, well, it moved around. A lot of these small town post offices would move from one house to the next as somebody would become the postmaster. T.Y. McClellan actually had the postmastership in Lewisburg / Victor Point, but it was known as Lewisburg. He had that postmastership before he came down to West Dayton and became the postmaster. And but I went to a gentleman's house up there down the road from the Victor Point School because I heard that there was a post office building on his site, and he said, yeah, it was this shed right here that was in his aerial photo. And he let me take the picture and get a copy. And then he says, the post office box section's up there in the attic. And I go, really, can I go up and see it? And so I'm up there looking at it, and he says, just bring that thing down and take it home. It's just a wooden box with glass front panels and wires running through the sections, and he just gave it to me. But I did have him documented that he gave it to me, just for problems. And, and a couple of the names were still on there, but very hard to make out. The doors, the glass panels didn't open. They would just ask them for their mail, or they'd reach around or walk up to the desk, and their numbers and names were there.
I imagine you probably know. So, on all these rural department, post office, they're federal employees, right?
Yeah, at that time they were.
So somebody has to appoint them, particularly when you have people that are rolling through quite a bit. Who's the authority for appointing them, and do they define the term?
Pretty good question. I don't know if they really came from like a senator or something, or if it's just.
Well, the one did it say President Clinton for?
Well, that was the building.
Yeah.
Just for the
Turn
turn
it back for when the president's on there.
That changed over time until it was formalized, I think, in the 20s or 30s. I don't have that memorized, but it was pretty loose for a long time.
Yeah. You could just
At
store.
the beginning, it was sort of a commerce thing, and then you have somebody, but I was just sort of wondering, because particularly you made mention that here in Aumsville, there were a lot of postmasters, and like, well, who's?
We have 10 different malls. We have 10 different locations, or 8 different locations in Aumsville: a store, real estate office, a couple of standalone buildings, the bank building, pretty old. Yeah. And I know I have a certificate at home that's actually appointed by a postmaster, and it's just signed by like the postmaster general, and it names this guy that's been appointed to the postmaster.
That's what I was
Yeah. So somebody could put them in for it, and then they, and then they give them the post.
It can be a thankless job too, because you all like to complain about the postal rates. Of course, that happens slowly over time.
Yeah. So anyhow, I got that home, and I've got it in my shop, and I got some old letters and stuff like
You
that.
gonna display that at any time?
It's too big to bring in. I mean, it's about the A by A, and it's kind of heavy. I think it's without breaking it, and the glass. If we had room, it would be up here. Yeah, I should get a good picture of it. Okay, so I did mention those previous 2 letters are 1852. Yeah, there's just a lot of postal history all over the state. And a lot of places where they don't exist anymore. Okay, next. So this is just a copy of some covers. This is the way another postal history member displays his covers. And they happen to be Aumsville, so I kept this one. What's interesting here is you have the name of the postmaster, David Schwank, right here. And the years of his service.
And the handwriting's nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Stick down. Also, what's interesting about that, I guess I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's the same postmark, I think it's coming up, unless I can. No, my next letter. But if you look on those town names over there, I can tell you a half a dozen or more that don't have post office anymore. There's Holly, Soderville, Berlin, Waterloo. Those all had post offices down there next to Lebanon. And look, there's a few more up there.
Is there,
Elkhorn had a post office. Holt had a post office.
is there a Shelburne?
Shelburne had a post office. Yeah.
Is there, it's not?
No, it's discontinued.
Not,
Yeah.
okay, it's not even, it's.
No. Carpenter.
Included.
Yeah. Building could have been in the store. Private residence. A lot of times at the private residence, they were in the front of the house as they came in. Okay, so number 9 now. This had the same kind of postmark, but actually it's the same one. What's interesting is they used a Maltese cross. And pointed out that D.E. Schwank was the postmaster. Well, this is his relative Sherman Swank, so all he did was cut the DE off of the postmark, and then kept using the stamp. It just has his last name, Swank, on it, which also they own the mill and so forth. And that again is addressed to the Porter brothers, which at that time would probably be real estate. And that's what I've seen that in other instances where they cut the names of the postmasters out of the rubber stamp until they get one of their own.
Why the Maltese cross?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I looked this up. It's a symbol of protection and a badge of honor, a symbol of the Order of Malta, universally associated with the Masonic Knights Templar. So I believe he probably belonged to that and just somehow had that stamp. And I can't tell from this if it's two separate stamps. He could have been using the round stamp. You know, nowadays you'll see a round stamp and it has bars that will reach across through the stamps. But, so this one, I just don't know if that's one or two. Let's see. Where's that other one? Makes me think, if you go back to number 8, if you can. So, yeah. So see, that stamp is, the round stamp's in the corner, and that is a Maltese cross on that bottom stamp. So I do believe now that I think about it, it's two different stamps. But he marked them like that, and then rounded them next to it. So, see, you help me figure something out. I've often wondered if that was connected to the round stamp. You might recognize this symbol. It's the fire departments, a lot of their badge system.
Yeah.
That's Maltese cross. They're not quite as bold as them, but they are a representation of the Maltese cross because it is a symbol of protection and a badge of honor. So that's kind of probably why it was used, and that's why the fire department uses it. Okay, the 13th here. This letter, a lot of you have heard of the Donker family, so this is from John Donker. I think he was one of the first children. But Renska, Sport, a relative. And there it's being addressed to a style shop, but yet it says Masonic Temple. So, and the Donker family, they had 8 kids, 8 children. And they had one daughter, and her name was actually Renska too, so they might have named her after this camp. 13, okay, 14. And so this is interesting too. It's McKinney, and it's same McKinney's out on Brick Road, the house that's there on Brick Road, the brick house on Brick Road.
My granddaughter's relatives.
And T.W. Johnson, he had a lot of hats. He was proprietor of Aumsville Pharmacy and later became the postmaster in 1918 to 29. But at the time that this was wrote, he was the mayor. But he also served as, I guess you could say, pharmacist, proprietor of the pharmacist, which is something you didn't realize was in a building right next to the museum. And they had a false wall between. And they lived in Backward, this Carmen?
I understand they did.
Yeah, it's kind of what we understood.
Yes.
And we have pictures of that building when it says drugstore, and also up above, right through the trees, you can see the words post office. And then later, it moved into the brick building. I have a friend, went to school with the Farmhurst, from the area Farmhurst. I remember, I moved here in '68, but sometime, maybe after we got out of school, I'm sure, that his dad bid $1 to tear that old pharmacy store building down. Wow. The city gave him, the bid for $1, and he found more than $1 worth of change in the floorboard. Plus, he got all the lumber. That was, I remember that article, I think we have it too, so that goes to the museum. So, yeah. like Gary said, we have a copy of the McKinney book, and we have cards there for the lady that wrote the McKinney book, and people have ordered from her. Okay, number 15. So this one's kind of interesting because it's addressed to the same person we had, Melinda Wade, same address, but ours is 1930, I think yours is 1912. So the reason she got this is because they send out these cards every year for the Aumsville Pioneer Association picnic. It was held over here at Swank Road, which was next to the mill, which Sherman Swank owned. And that went from about 1921 to 1940, 41. We have the ledger book over there where everybody either signed in or something, wrote their names in as they came to the picnic. And so every year they'd send out these cards. And of course, over the years, the president, the secretary, the treasurer would change names. We have the original ledger plus a copy of it. Okay, yeah. It's one of the newer ones that I have, but it's interesting because it's of the invitation.
Ron Boone, she's the one that donated the park.
Yeah, Bob Boone's the one that donated the park. That was after I moved here too.
So was the Pioneer Association a more widespread thing? I remember there was some discussion at the state fair that for a period of time there were pioneer storytellings in the state fair.
It could have been, a lot of communities could have been pioneer associations, and they might have had an umbrella under there. Yeah, well, and or connected to the ranges or something like that. Okay, next one. Whoop. Okay, so this one is, this was donated to us by one of my postal history members, and it's just what they would put registered mail into. And there again, it says James Smith, postmaster.
Is that Oakland?
Yeah, Oakland, Douglas County, Oregon. A lot of times they put the county, well, that of course has a stamp place for it. Registered mail, they would probably want to do that.
I've never seen it.
Mention the contents, I guess, condition, and okay, or good, and then people would get it and open it up. And it might have been interdepartmental too, so I'm not sure on that. I brought the original over, it's underneath the scales there. Dang, just about covered it. There's a couple more clips. This one, I just have to share this. We have the copy over there, but this is for you folks to see from here. What's interesting about this is Harry Wade, the postmaster, in February 1952, writing a letter to the post office department requesting a remodel of the building to add running water and bathroom facilities. This is 1952. He says, we should be entitled to the same conveniences that we enjoy in our own homes. And he goes on to explain that there's just an outhouse outside and anybody in town could use it. So it was a brick building here. So sometime after 52, they had bathroom installed.
Wow, so they basically had to use an outhouse.
Yeah, and no running water. Well, probably a faucet outside maybe. Yeah, a little scary. I thought of that too. So that's pretty good. I like this letter. Yeah, at that time, we were probably a third class post office. They used to have rating fourth class, third class, second class.
In the 50s in Idaho, we did not have in the rural schools. It was all outdoor bathrooms.
Yeah.
Go through the snow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
Freeze to death in the winter.
There were residents' houses over for these outhouses.
Yeah.
Not in the 60s, you know.
I know of one, so she was about 5 years old.
My own cousins had that.
So then, going to this. This is a periodical from the association that I belong to. You see the 4 states up there. Well, one of their members came down, he's a pretty good writer, and he interviewed me, and I put together pictures, and he did a nice 3-page article of Aumsville post offices. That's 2 samples of them right there, the Porter Real Estate Office and Heinz General Store. Now that building, all of that's on 8th and Main. Some of you know where the Horches used to live. That building, the store building was attached to their house. At the time, it was probably behind, and they didn't have a garage there either. But that's where that, and then that water tower that's up there on the right, that's where a lot of the old vintage postcards that we have been taken across town, dated in about 1905 or 15 or 14. And so in that article, there's a breakdown of each post office site. I saw that showed the cover and then the individual pages are over there. So we got published in Aumsville. Okay, so yep, there's the brick building as it sits now. It was the post office.
It is dark.
Pretty nice.
Oh,
Huh? It was City Hall for about 25, 30 years or more.
originally it was a city hall, and then it made it the post office?
No, post office was before.
Oh, it was post office and then city hall.
Yeah.
Bank somewhere.
Yeah, it was a bank, 13, about 1912 or 13 to 33.
Okay, so it was built to be a bank.
It was built to be a bank. We have an original picture from the Rosenberg family that originally started the bank, and then E.T. Pierce, who also had the bank in Turner. They had both banks.
Also has a vault in the back.
Yeah, and the vault is in the back. We had a gentleman signing in, and he goes, some of you have been into the front entrance there where we had our little office desk behind it and all that, the counter. He says, well, this is where the post office boxes used to be. He actually served as an acting postmaster from Aumsville, and he came in and visited. Kind of neat. He perked my interest right away. I think it was, came up from California visiting some family out on Chaparral. Okay, so,
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
I've been doing research on old post office and old city hall, most of the old city halls, and there seems to be a correlation with water towers behind them. Is that just because of the war back in those days, that the older buildings have the water towers, or is it just a coincidence? Because I'm finding a lot of old pictures with water towers behind them. Have you thought about that?
Well, I think that was in order to have water pressure, I think. Because they had piping, but they just did
Oh, maybe for the pre-existing
for
buildings.
pressure.
Located in the middle of town.
Yeah, there was the one on 8th Street, across the street from there, Ed and Carlene lived. There was one down on Klein Street,
What was that?
water tower off of Klein Street.
Uh,
I've seen it in the pictures, I think. At
Could
least
have
two.
been, there's some water in that tower there now.
Yeah, the tower concrete pieces are still there, but that might have been a train one, but there was a regular one too,
Oh, you're talking about
next to the bank.
where the bank is?
Yeah.
That was for the train.
Yeah,
That, it had water to, because the steam train, whatever they call it.
The steam train,
They had to
yeah.
get the water from there.
Yeah,
The pilings are there.
yeah, some of them on city land. The one that was on 8th Street, the guy that owns that house now, he's had to keep fixing the sidewalk because it'll settle.
Yes, he
Where the
does.
well was.
Well, you mentioned it was like a missile silo underneath that? Didn't-
No.
Underneath that? And somebody told me like a missile silo underneath the water tower.
That was built in, we have pictures of that when it was built.
Couldn't be, that's what I heard, that it was an old missile site that they took out. And that was,
Not long
I thought that was
ago.
kind of weird. I thought that was kind of weird.
So, yeah, we're very fortunate to have that
Somebody in the
building.
Aumsville Museum told me that. I don't know.
It's, the size of it is 24 by 40.
Well,
So,
there's Johnson, there it is.
yeah, there's the drugstore, but that's a different front. The next picture you will see shows the glass front part of it. And this one is when it served as the post office. And, yeah, the clock's not, well, the clock was installed by the city, the one that's out there now.
Oh, that was weird.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's the building back in the day.
Is it joint or common wall?
There was, yeah, actually with kind of a false front from the street, maybe on the back too. Yeah, yeah, almost. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of the way I might remember it somewhat, but city used it for City Hall too for a while, like the fire department. All right, next one, I think shows, yeah, so here's the old one. There's the red arrow that points to the post office sign. You notice the building is all glass front. Then it moved from there to this one.
Which one was the first one?
The dark square.
This one was the original.
Both buildings were there, but that piece, he was the postmaster and it served. And I didn't even see that when I had that picture. One of my friends from the Postal History Group said, well, there's a post office right there. So I said, okay, good find.
Makes sense to store the man, drugstore to the commons.
Mhm.
Back to that version issue about you have to get traffic light and class on.
Well, that's why they were in stores. Yeah. And that's why a lot of the towns just kind of became a populated place, because there was no store and a post office. No reason, and then transportation became better, so they could go further to go to another.
You notice the water towers.
Yeah, it wasn't there yet. When was the water tower built, Carly?
64, 65.
Okay, yeah. I know it was here when I'm. So next, that's Figaro's. Yeah.
Oh, look at the old farm.
And what's interesting too is they built this one a different, well, of course, it's 58.
Yeah.
Gary showed you a picture of the Turner Post Office, the Dundee Post Office, the Jervis Post Office, the Jefferson Old Post Office, all have that brick front design that Turner has, or the old Turner building.
Yeah.
And nowadays, when you go around, you see all the cookie cutter post offices that look like Turner. It's just that same style building. And it aggravates me that they don't put the town names on these post office buildings. I don't know if I've shared this with some of the Turner people, but I used to stop in there and visit the guy that was the postmaster. Prince was his name, I believe, or that's the name he went by, AKA. And I said, man, before you retire, you got to get the name on that building. He did. It says Turner, Oregon, because it was not there when they first built that building. You go to Aurora, Silverton, many other post offices I've seen, no names, not even on a sign up front, not even on the building. And that used to be a symbol of identification for the communities in the towns. And it's frustrating that they don't identify. So, yeah, so there's that one, and then the Figaro's is there. And, yeah.
Let's have some pizza.
Yeah. So just a little footnote, the fire hall, that was the old fire hall, but it used to be Woodward Heating. So right across there, the one they're putting the tie-back wrap on,
Yeah.
used to be the old fire hall. Those folks they have a staffing service in Salem, and they gutted that thing and remodeled it. And they're gonna put a mural on this wall, and it represents the old hillside.
It's already.
And he took it from a postcard that they had over at the museum. Yeah, and once they get done with some of that siding, they're gonna put that up. They have, you remember his name, Carol? Paul Toews. Yep, got it now. Paul Toews, T-O-E-W-S, something like that. He has a studio on 3rd Street, and,
He's done some ones, I think you.
yeah, he's done the one in the murals in Sublimity, and they commissioned him to do this one, and it'll be put up. I talked to the owner the other day, and he said as soon as they get some of that siding done, they want to install it. It's made out of the same board that the highway department uses for signs, so it's very durable and supposedly vandal-free or easy to clean up. Michael, do you guys use any of those kind of boards and signs?
There's a coating that you can
Coat.
put over the signs that makes it removable. And it doesn't damage
Yeah.
the artwork.
Then they're going to have an information board in front of us. So looking forward to having that put up. Okay, next, I guess we have.
Dan?
Oh,
I think he pronounces his name Taves.
Taves, but I don't, is it Taves? Okay, but it is, what's the spelling? Is it
It's W in there.
Yeah, no, it is a W. All right, I guess, oh, did we miss one? Okay. That's all right, not this one. No, I guess it's next. Of course, that's our current post office. I like this one. I'll tell you what, when you drive around town, different parts of the state, if you want to take pictures of the post offices, and Aumsville was guilty of that, there'd be, and Jefferson had that too. There's 6 or 8 newspaper stands in front of the post office. Just makes for an ugly picture. And I don't know, to date, carving, has there only been one car go through the wall that you recall?
Oh, it has been more than one.
Not the brick wall, the side wall. They jumped the curb and taken out the wall. Fortunately, the post office boxes are on the other wall.
There's 3 that I know of.
3? Okay. I was thinking there was at least 2, but I only kind of recall one.
And they hit every one, back corner, back corner.
She was a driver. And some of that was before cell phones.
Concrete's so cheap, why don't they put some
Yeah.
little bumps on there?
Yeah, they just have a sidewalk. And of course, the next one, I guess not to be outdone, is the interior of the Aumsville post office. So we had a really good postmaster for about 8 years, Raymond Berg, and he was involved with the community. He did corn sales and had express boxes going out across the country. People could buy a dozen ears of corn and put it in the box, or half a dozen, and they would express mail them out. And he rode in the parade, and he had helped organize an Aumsville stamp club for a while, and Gary came to that, and I did. And some young folks were here doing that, so he was very involved, community oriented. You don't get that too much anymore from some of the postmasters. So, okay, well, I thank you very much. Any questions, anything else?
Yeah, this, either one of you can answer this. Goes back to the rural delivery idea. And I think you opened by saying that people were glad of it because it was difficult to get from their farm to the post office. Where I come from, I remember hearing stories about people couldn't travel sometimes in a good wet winter.
Yeah.
So how do they get the mail in the other direction in one of those dead of winter when the roads are all clogged?
And this probably wasn't delivered.
Yeah, they could.
Because you talk about snowbanks and ice and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or just mud.
Mud, yeah, it would, I think I've seen some articles, and yeah, it just gets delayed, but at least they had a good excuse. Whereas today, your bill gets delayed, and it's not a good excuse. Yeah. I've been over on, out of Belknap Springs, you take that road that goes over to Sisters, and there's a mailman cabin site there. It was a mailman that got caught in a snowstorm, and he went in that cabin and froze to death. So, taking the mail from wherever, you know, up to the Sisters, and he didn't
Is
make
that
it.
what it's called, Senator, isn't it Senator, some of them call it Senator Drive?
Don't know about the cemeteries, but I do remember seeing that mailman state highway, like a state highway sign.
Have they ever put a plaque?
There was a plaque or signage there, because that's why I know I stopped and read it and took a picture of it. But, yeah, there was a lot of places where things would be bogged down in the winter, I'm sure. And like you said, people getting off their farms, but also that's why there's so many little rural pioneer schools, because one farmer was donating an acre of ground for a school and the other guy, so they didn't have to go like this over the other hills to get to school. The kids just went closer and closer, and the little pioneer school buildings popped up all over the countryside.
So am I correct in thinking that, for instance, Salem would have been a major coastal area, and that they would have had a carrier bring the mail out to Aumsville or return?
Contract.
And then they would turn, and Aumsville would have the RFP.
Yeah.
Be able to run around.
They pay people to transport the mail out to the different cities.
They probably use trains for that often.
Well, not too many
Letter
trains.
from the Brian, I mean,
Yeah, maybe on, you know, some of the trains they would
It
get
was
mail.
really young and the RFD refers to rural.
Free delivery.
Free, oh, free delivery.
Rural free
I mean,
delivery.
it is free.
No, I got an article about a carrier trying to get mail to, well, up at Silver Creek Falls, there was a town called Argenti, and then there was also Holt and Knight. And so he was trying to get mail up there, you know, things like that. I worked for the post office. I feel bad about the way things have gone. But I remember when I started in '73, I was really impressed. They had these highway post offices that pulled in the same buses, like Greyhound buses, and they would be they'd pick up mail and they would process it. And what I looked in there one time, here's the registry clerk with a sign on it, because they did that back in those days. And then, of course, that's HPO, Highway Post Office, and then RPO is what it stands for, Railroad Post Office. And they would have a boxcar that they would pick up mail. Sometimes they wouldn't stop at the town. They'd have catchers out there with a mail bag and grab them, sort the mail, redistribute it to the next town, and ones down the line. So yes, they did use the railroad. And it was sorted. It didn't go to Salem and didn't get resorted.
Period of time where I think is as late as the late 60s, early 70s, that in the town, the postal carrier would pick up letters that was in just rather than the town, would process it for the package.
Yes, you could.
I think Don Killinger, George's son Don, lived at Dublin. He actually was one of the railroad mail guys for several years. He came on Salem or Portland down to like Indiana.
They had contractors. They're all contract drivers that come out and bring the mail now to these different stations. We have a picture over there at the railroad depot. The cart that's on the left with the gentleman standing there, that's a mail cart. He's waiting for the mail to get off the train and take it over to the post office.
I think we'll close it at this
Yeah.
point. You can ask Ted and I questions or things to look over there. And I want to say thank you again
Thank you.
to Dave Bonnick for all this digital work.
Thank you.
And just two other things. Lots of postmarks in the 19th century were handmade. The jumping donkey or something like that, and they're very valuable, they're rare. And so the collectors like to collect postmarks that are unique and handmade and hand done.
Do you have a sample of anything like that there?
No, I've never even seen some. I've seen pictures of them. The final thing I want to say, and I'm not going to mention a name, but within 40 miles of here, someone was the most significant postal history collector in Oregon. And when he passed away 7 years ago, I think that estate went for about $2 million. So there's big money in old postal history. That's all I'm going to say.